It took me about 5 years after the divorce to recover and stop fearing relationships. I don't know who I married, you or your mother.
I don't regret having had this experience.
How did you meet?
Back then, of course, there was no internet, only newspapers. There was this very popular newspaper that published personal ads. This newspaper was widely circulated. It featured ads for finding a marriage partner, acquaintances, and so on. That's how I found a date, through an ad. I was 26 at the time, and my spouse was, I believe, a year younger. She was 25.
We met at my former workplace. He was a developer, and I supervised the training department, so I needed his assistance in some aspects. That's how we started communicating. I was 27 when we got married, and he was 23.
My ex-wife was Lithuanian. She studied in the same city where I lived. A friend of mine introduced us. I was 20, and my wife was about the same age, just 6 months older than me.
Why did you decide to get married?
It was love. We got married after 2 years.
Overall, our relationship lasted a year before marriage. I knew we would get married. The proposal was there. It was pre-discussed, so to say, but I must give him credit. Before asking for my hand, he first called my father to ask for permission, a touch of chivalry there.
What was your wedding like?
Our wedding was quite lavish, as my wife was a foreigner, and we wanted something wow. I paid for the major expenses. My parents and the bride's parents only paid for the restaurant. Yes, I regretted the money spent after the divorce, like everyone does, because the amount was significant.
In fact, we never got to the ceremonial part. We just went to the registry office, had a small celebration for just the two of us, and nothing more. The big event with pomp and a lot of relatives was planned for a few months later, but unfortunately we canceled it. Just about 3 weeks before, actually.
Our wedding was official, a marriage certificate, and then a divorce certificate, which I still keep at home. Our wedding was modest, with just close family members at home. The expenses weren't too high. We didn't book a restaurant or anything. It was just a simple family dinner. We went to the registry office, got married, came back, had a drink, ate, kissed, and that was it.
Why did you get divorced?
Again, if we go back to that time, my mother-in-law and I had completely different views on life. She was old school, a kindergarten principal. Unfortunately, we couldn't find common ground. In the end, that's what happened. I couldn't take it anymore. I said, "Listen, let's sort this out. I don't know who I married, you or your mother." My wife couldn't make any decisions independently. The decision to divorce was mine. The reason for the divorce was, firstly, the distance, as my wife went back to her home in another country. We saw each other every 2 weeks. I saw her messaging with her ex. Essentially, I caught her cheating.
To put it very briefly and directly, it was mainly about lies, deceit, something big that could have triggered a series of life-changing events. I wouldn't say he was the only one to blame, not at all. At some point, even I lacked the wisdom, understanding, acceptance. We remained on good terms. We just realized that there was no future development for our relationship.
Before the wedding, did you anticipate that you would face difficulties?
Before the wedding, I anticipated that we would face difficulties. My friends tried to dissuade me, but I was in love. Yes, there were such thoughts. When orphans marry, they have no one to consult with. Here, parents are always around. My future mother-in-law, the bride's mother, didn't like me from the start.
There were difficulties everywhere. But did I think it would lead to divorce? No. At weddings, they often toast about understanding, listen to each other, hear each other. In reality, very few truly understand the meaning of these words.
Was the divorce painful for you?
For me, the divorce wasn't painful at all. For me, the divorce was very painful, as I loved the person. I suffered, lost weight in a month. I couldn't eat anything. I think I lost about 15 kilograms in a month. I was very upset. but over time, I came to terms with it. As for my ex-wife, I can't say anything since we almost immediately stopped communicating.
There were tears, of course. No hysterics. What's the point of them? You can sit down calmly like adults and talk. To create scandals, arguments, that's super strange.
Did you face any difficulties during the divorce?
During the divorce, there were no difficulties. Everything was quiet and peaceful, no division of assets. Yes, there was some jointly acquired property, but my wife left everything to me. Well, the only car we had, we sold and split the money. Among the belongings were a bed, a refrigerator, household items like that. Perhaps if my wife hadn't lived in another country, there might have been some disputes over property. But since it was inconvenient for her to transport everything to another country, I got it all.
Would you like to meet your former partner again?
Probably yes. To see how she is, what she is doing, how her life turned out. After the divorce, my ex-wife and I never saw each other. I met her mother in the city a few times, many years later. If there was an opportunity to meet now, I probably wouldn't want to. Why stir all that up? I, like everyone else, occasionally check her profile on social networks. I know she remarried. That's about it, really.
We don't see each other now. Well, for obvious reasons. He's a citizen of another country now. But if we see each other, there will be no problems. There are still issues that we need to resolve together. We can communicate about work. If I need to stay at his place, I can easily come over, just as I would gladly welcome him. I can't even imagine relationships where people become enemies afterwards.
Do you regret the divorce?
I don't regret having had this experience. Every step of your life adds a certain background to your life's treasury. So, no regrets. And if we had tried to save our marriage for 8 months instead of 6, I'm more than sure that nothing would have changed.
I never regretted the divorce. On the contrary, I only regretted the wedding, that I rushed into it without experience. Now, with time past, of course, my attitude towards it all is different. I regretted more that I got married than the divorce itself. Well, divorce is such a thing. It came to this, and it was inevitable. I probably wouldn't change anything. I'd leave it all as it was.
How has the divorce affected your life?
The divorce positively impacted my life, especially morally and psychologically. It made me value freedom more. Freedom of action, movement, thought, and deeds. The pressure I felt was gone. I was very afraid of relationships for a long time, and perhaps I still am to some extent. I try to avoid them, but I've started trying again. It took me about 5 years after the divorce to recover and stop fearing relationships.
I wouldn't say that the divorce significantly impacted my life. It was a certain experience. There were tears that apparently needed to be shed, and joys and laughter that had to be experienced at a certain time in life. That time has passed. I'm thankful for the opportunity it gave me, and I'm moving on. Simply put, he and I were not a match.
What advice would you give to those who want to get married?
First of all, there should be some similarity in temper. Spend no less than a year together to test the relationship. I don't believe in the suffering through it until you get used to it approach. Many marriages fall apart, particularly due to everyday problems. It's the small domestic issues that ruin marriages. Don't spend a fortune on the wedding. I remember my ex-wife's reaction. She was so enthusiastic, wanting a lavish white dress, an expensive restaurant, etc. And then, how she cried over the money and nerves spent, because it's very challenging. It's better to gather with close friends in a small restaurant. That should be enough.
Understand the meaning of acceptance. It's not something you can grasp immediately. Don't expect your partner to know and understand you right away. They are a separate individual with their own thoughts and views. They've lived their own 25 to 30 years. It's normal for them to have a different approach to situations and to reason differently. If you accept a person and are ready to see them as your support and future, then no problems will be too big to handle.